clear, and then we can get with our lesson on the Uttara Bhadrapada. So over to you, Yuji.
गणानां त्वा गणपतिं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पत आनुशृण्वन् नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ नमो भगवते रुद्राय नमस्ते अस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्रयम्बकाय त्रिपुरन्धकाय त्रिकालग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः। ॐ नमः शिवाय।
Thank you very much, Yuji. That was wonderful. So let's get started with today's discussion. Usually our sessions go very long, and just before we got started, also we were getting into some discussions on things that probably we will discuss later on when it comes to the Bhadrapadas. But let's go to understanding what a Bhadrapada is, because I like to go and discuss about some concepts of Bhadrapadas, and then I think Dr. Togi and Dr. Kanoli Sante Krishnan and Evji will be able to give you more details about it. But today I did a little more study on the deities of Uttara Bhadrapada, because these two Rudra deities are very fascinating and very mystical. There is not much information that is there. So I did some deep dive to see, and so I will share some of those insights that came across. Okay, let's go to understanding Bhadrapada. The word Bhadra, I will go and now talk a little bit about Bhadra. Now, you have commonly seen the word Bhadra in Sanskrit has various meanings, but I will try to say what Bhadra is, and then you can probably attach a deity associated with the word Bhadra. So, Bhadra means goodness, gracious, auspicious, excellent, kind, dear. So these are all some descriptions that you can take all of them together. Okay. Then it also says in the Sanskrit dictionary that Bhadra means fair, lovely, beautiful. That's another set of keywords. Then the third set of keywords that I came across is lucky, fortunate, blessed, prosperous. Right? Again, that is another set of keywords. Then Bhadra also means good in or skillful in. You are skillful in certain kinds of art or fine arts or something that you do, your skills. So these were some of the descriptions of the keywords. Now, Bhadra in Sanskrit also means, which I didn't know when I was doing my deep study, I found out Bhadra also means gold. Okay, Bhadra also means the cow. So if I have to summarize all of this, beautiful, lucky, prosperous, auspicious, there could be only one goddess that comes to your mind. What is that goddess? Related to gold, beauty, dear, fair, auspicious, what deity could it be? It's Mata
Well, I was
Lakshmi.
just
Lakshmi ji.
yeah, that's
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Mata Lakshmi will definitely show you all of these traits of Bhadra. So Bhadra is auspicious, and prosperous and everything. So this nakshatra, of course, has a connection with Mahalakshmi, Mata Lakshmi as well.
What about
Now,
Lord Vishnu? What about Lord Vishnu?
I will come to that. I will also say why Lord Vishnu is also associated with this nakshatra.
Yep.
Then I came across some more things that are associated with Bhadra. The celestial Ganges, before it came to the earth, was called Bhadra. Okay. Then now I'm coming a little more deeper into things. Bhadra is also the month. Do you know which month is Bhadra in the solar calendar?
Bhadrapada, correct?
The Navaratri or something, right?
August or September would be.
August, September. Yeah, Bhadrapada.
So people used to call the month of August or September as Bhadra, Bhadra Masa or Bhadrapada. Okay. Okay. Then there are certain trees also associated with them. In Sanskrit, Bhadra means it is a silver fir tree, the European fir tree, not a fig, fir tree, silver. In Sanskrit, also the Indian deodar tree, what we call the cedar or the cedar tree, right? Deodar, we call it. That is also called as Bhadra. And one more tree is also called as Bhadra by the ancients, which is called Kadamba tree. Fascinating, because what I see is this nakshatra is connected to very strongly with trees, because it is connected to the Mula Tattva. Okay, let's park that to the side. So now we have seen all of the different themes of Bhadra. Now I want to say Sanskrit also says in a specific context, Bhadra is iron and steel. Now you will see the contrast. One is gold, other thing is iron and steel. Now I want to say the word Bhadra in the Tithi concept, in the Karana concept, Vishti Karana is also called as Bhadra, and Vishti Karana is associated with Saturn. We were just talking as before we got started. Amongst the Mahapurushas Yoga, Bhadra Mahapurusha Yoga is connected to Mercury. However, Mercury gets debilitated in Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra. But still in the Mahapurushas, it is called as a Bhadra, isn't it? So, also, when you see the next thing, so now this is clear. What is Bhadra? And Bhadrapada, auspicious feet. Now, whenever we come to the combination stars, which are we saying? The Purva and the Uttara. See, whenever we see Purva nakshatras and the Uttara nakshatras, there is some common themes that are associated with them. You will see all Purva nakshatras are called as a Brahmana Varna, which means they are connected to Brahmins, priestly caste. Uttara nakshatras are all connected to Kshatriyas, which is the warrior. They're always coming in pairs, whether it is Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni. Okay? Purva and Uttara are the right, especially from this part to your elbows. This part is called as the Falguni. So Purva is the right and Uttara is the left. Not the wrist, only the arm, the forearm from your elbow. Now, Purva Shada and Uttara Shada, it is connected to the hip region. One is the right hip, Purva, and Uttara is the left. And when we come to the Bhadrapadas, it is between your knees and your ankles is the Bhadrapada. Okay? So that would be the Purva and Uttara, the right leg and the left leg. Now, whenever we go certain rituals you see whenever we enter a temple. Okay. My mother and my grandmother always used to say when we enter a temple, with your right foot in. So when you're getting inside a temple, your right foot should go in first. Like it is the purva, which goes in first. While you are exiting, they used to say, put the left foot outside first before you exit. Now, I don't know how many of them would be following this. So always entering the temple, as you go through the main dwara of the temple, and there is usually a big thing, you have to lift your leg and put it. It's like a big foot going in, because it's not like just you walk through. Usually at the main temple, the main dwara, there is a big step which is there, and you have to cross the step and put your foot in. So Purva is the one which is, when you are entering the temple, Purva is the initiation where you are, it is, see, all the Purva nakshatras are Ugra. Ugra. Okay? They are fierce. All Uttara nakshatras are Sthira or Dhruva, which is stable. That means when you are getting in, you are going in by saying, look, I'm unstable. I'm Ugra. When you're coming out with the blessings of the deity, you are stable. That's why you're putting your left feet out. That means you have calmed down. You have become sthira. You have become, you have stabilized yourself. Do you see? So the auspicious feet going in also is a ritual. You see, whenever in Hindu marriages happen, after that, when the woman first time has to enter the her husband's house after the marriage, there is a pot of rice kumbha which is kept, and she has to kick it and put her right foot in first as she gets inside the house. It's not the left foot in. Do you see? Then the second feet will come is the sthira, which is the left. Similarly, whenever we also understand Swara Yoga, which is your cycles of breath. In the morning when we get up, depending on which nostril is active, you have to keep the other feet down first, because that is how you ground your energies. It's Swara Shastra. Based on what nostril is active, the other feet should go. So which feet has to go will also depend on, because that is how you start your auspicious day. The first thing that will touch Bhudevi after you get up from your cot or your bed is the feet. Bhadrapadas is also connected to the cot. All the Purva and Uttara are connected to cots in some way. So the Purva Falguni and Uttara Falguni, it's the relaxation cot. It's like your divan, what we call it. It's a couch where you relax and you watch your television. Purva Shada and Uttara Shada, that's where you take your siestas. See, the Falgunis is always your enjoyment cot. Your Uttara is more the conjugal, because that is formalized. Purva is where you have your foreplay, where you start your engagement with the process with your lover or your partner. Okay? And somebody told me this, I'd gone to a Rajasthan fort. In the Rajasthan fort, there was a bed that I saw for the kings, which was maybe half the size of a normal bed where you can sleep comfortably. And then there is a bed which is the royal room where the king actually sleeps with his wife, the Maharani. But there is another room. Somewhere down the aisle, there is another room where there is a shorter bed. So I asked him, why is the bed very short here in this room? That was the room which the king used for the women that come from his harem. And it was shorter bed because when they are doing a quickie, they have to keep their feet out because the wall, wherever anybody can attack them, they should be easily able to leap out from and take the attack. So the bed of Purva Falguni is actually shorter. Uttara Bhadrapada is the real conjugate. So Ashadas are different, and then here is the funeral bed, the final bed that takes you to your crematorium. It's your final destination. Interesting, huh? Also, you see, all the Purva Nakshatras are Adhomukha, facing downwards. So Purva is your learning, you're fresh, you are an apprentice. And Uttaras is where you're matured, you're seasoned player, when you're serious. So it is the maturity cycle that you see in Purva and Uttara. Interesting, isn't it? So the next thing I want to talk about is the deity, which is Ahir Budanya or Ahir Pragnya. Now the word to understand Ahi Budanya, we have to really, it's made of two words, Ahi. Now Ahi means various meanings in Sanskrit again. Now one of the meanings which I didn't know what Ahi means is the number 8 is Ahi. Ahi is number 8. Okay. We talk about Ashtamurti. You know which deity is called Ashtamurti? Shiva is called Ashtamurti. 8. So it's
we also call Ashtavinayaka, correct?
There is Ashtavinayaka also. That is a formation of how Ganapatis are standing, because he is also controlling the Ashtadikpalas. Ashtadikpalas are the 8 directional gods. Okay, but Ashtamurti is Shiva. Rudra is called as Ashtamurti. Ekadasha Rudras are his 11 abstractions, but he is called Ashtamurti. So number 8, that's one thing, Ahi. Second, Ahi means the cloud. See, we were just discussing this, and probably, Evji will discuss more about that as she goes through her slides. It was an interesting point that she brought up. She said, when we look at the nakshatras which come in Pisces, she hasn't seen a connection with waters, but with Akash Tattva, which I completely agree, because the last 4.5 nakshatras from Dhanishta to Revati is Akash Tattva. But interestingly, when I read Shiv Swarodaya, there is a classification of nakshatras which is given in Shiv Swarodaya. Shiv Swarodaya talks, this is connected to Jala. So I am wondering, this is somewhere connected to atmospheric endeavors which happen in the mid sky or the mid heavens, which means aerial connection, aerospace, air travel, airline industry, rains, because cloud bearing rains. So some connection with the rains has to happen. So it is a water dragon of the water, but I will talk about more about that. Yeah.
May I
Yes.
just, because you're right,
Yeah.
and for the viewers, when they like texts like Shiva Swarodaya or any of these they're more yogic.
Yeah.
When they talk about waters, perhaps it's more cryptic.
Absolutely.
It's got a different meaning. If you read Shiva Samhita, as a matter of fact, it says not to share this knowledge. It says it's a Gupta Vidya or a Guhya Vidya, and that the wise know to conceal it. So a lot of times, even though they'll give the text, so much of that text is encrypted, and you have to actually know what it means. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Evji, for adding that. Because see, we do not know, it has to be learned from the yogic tradition. I was just sharing what I have read, but I do not know the interpretation unless it comes from a parampara or you have learned from the yogic tradition. That's very true. Okay. Okay, now Ahi, there is another thing is it's connected to the cows and also to the serpents. Ahi means serpent, remember. See, many people do not know the mount of Indra is not an elephant. He is born, he is brothers with the serpents. He is called as Ahiravat. Ahiravat is not elephant, but he is a Naga. He is called Nagamalla. Okay, that is his real name is Nagamalla. Ahiravat is the name which is given, and people depict him like an elephant, a white elephant, but with three trunks. That is also his multi-hood. You can actually think about it. He is a kind of a Naga. That's why Indra is very friendly with the Nagas. He gives them a lot of, in the Puranas and Itihasas, you see, he's always friendly and he tries to protect the Nagas. Okay, right. Now, then the next thing, Ahi, means this is the real thing. This is real stuff that I'm trying to talk about now. Ahi means when you look at Padma Purana. Padma Purana wonderfully talks about the connection of Ahir Budanya being one of the sons of Vishwakarma. He says Vishwakarma and Surabhi. Surabhi means Kamadhenu, the celestial wish granting cow, is what I believe, because Surabhi could be another name of a lady. We do not know. Vishwakarma and his wife Surabhi in Padma Purana is said to have 5 sons and 1 daughter. Who are the sons? In Padma Purana it says it is Ajay Ekapad, Ahir Budanya, Tvastha, Rudra, Brahishmati, and Samadhyana, which is the wife of Marthanda, Vivaswat Surya, Aditya. This is given also in Vishwakarma Shilpa, which is a Shilpa Shastra, which means iconography, how the depiction of the deities have to be. And in this Shastra of Vishwakarma Shilpa, which is like Vastu Shastra, it is a Shilpa Shastra, which means sculpture. Every depiction of a sculpture is very key, and people, this is what I try to do. I put a lot of emphasis in my classes that I teach on the iconography of the deity, because many people use different iconography. If you see, for example, Vishnu should have chakra in the back right hand and Shankha in his left back hand. The front right hand should have a gada, a mace, and the left front hand should have a padma, lotus. This is his iconography, because all of this are representation of saying his body is Akash Tattva, which is blue in color. The chakra is fire element, Sudarshan chakra. The conch shell he is holding, which is Shankha, it is water element. Padma, because it is to the grounded, it is earth element, and the mace is Vayu Tattva. And his body is Akash Tattva. So it is a representation, and the representation has to be clearly depicted. So in this Vishwakarma Shilpa Shastra, Ahir Budnya has been depicted with 16 arms, with so many weapons in it. 16 arms, 8 in the right, 8 in the left. Okay, now Ahir Budanya. What does Budanya mean? Budnya or Budanya means foundation of the world, somebody who roots or who binds together. The ancients saw as a divine serpent which is binding the sky with the oceans, the heaven with the earth. The binder of the heaven and the earth was a kind of a Rudra, and there were 2 forms of Rudra. And these 2 forms of Rudras are the greatest devotees of Vishnu, is been said in Ahir Budnya Samhita, which is a Vaishnava Samhita. Now, if you really go a little bit deeper, what am I trying to say is, it is Ahir Budanya is the serpent or the dragon which is holding the sky and the ocean together, is a reference to the gravitational force. And he is nobody, but he is Ananta Shesha. On his multi-hoods, the whole world is reclining. So as Aja Ekapada, that is his feisty Ugra nature, is the one-footed goat, that is Anantashesha's Ugra nature, and the calm, composed, benevolent nature is the one which is just saying Vishnu mantras on his multi-hoods, and the earth is balancing on his multi-hoods. This is the boon which is given to Brahma. In Padma Purana, it talks about. So, Ahirbudnya is nobody but Anantashesha. And both these Shiva avatars, Rudra avatars, are an incarnation of Anantashesha. Has been given in some Puranas as well. Okay, so Budhanya means the foundation, the stability. But where is he stabilizing? These are atmospheric Rudras. These are like Maruts. Maruts are the children of the Rudras. Now, interestingly, when we started looking at all of these things, we have to know that there are 7 lokas above and 7 lokas below. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, Mahajanar Tapa Satyam. Satyam is the Brahma Loka, that is above us. 7 lokas. And there are 7. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Tasatala, Mahatala, Talatala, Patala. Now, when you look at the Puranic text, they talk about the Loka, which is holding the stability, is ruled by Kamadhenu, which is Rasatala. And her sons are living there, which is Anantashesha. Anantashesha is in Rasatala, is the land, the layers below, the plains, lokas below. So he's a divine serpent in Rasatala and he's supporting. That's one thing. Now that is one of the meanings. The other thing in certain texts you also see is also called as Ahir Bhragnya. Now when I went a little deeper to understand what is Ahir Bhragnya, Ahir Bhragnya means matted hair. And Ahi means serpents or water, as I said. So if you look at Shiva, he has, Ganga coming out of it. I also mentioned Bhadra is a kind of celestial. So Ganga from the heavens didn't come straight onto earth. It fell into the matted hair of Shiva. And there she was there for thousands of years. She was there before he, Bhagirath came and he left it to flow onto the earth. So Ahir Bhagnya is the water or the serpents which are, that is the reason one of the interpretations is the water serpent. Why is it water serpent? It is the matted hair of Shiva in which the Mata Ganga was swirling and the serpents were also there. So you can see matted hair with serpents is Ahir Bhagnya. And what is he doing? He carries the burden of the world. Ahir Bhragnya also means one who carries the burden of the world. So Budhanya means, as I said, foundation of the world. One who tries to be the rooter, who binds together things. And that is why you see more themes of binding which can come here. Okay, so some of the other themes that I would also want to talk about is the deity as per Kumaraswamy in a Tamil text, which is believed to have been the word of mouth which was given to Agastya Rishi by Kumara, who is none other than Murugan or Kartikeya, Subramanya. So in that, they say the deity associated with this is not Ahir Bhagnya, it is Kamadhenu or Surabhi. There is a lot of connection with the holy cow, with this nakshatra. So cows were said to be wealth in the past. Livestock was the wealth. Things were given as gifts to priests and Brahmins and to rishis were the cows. Nobody went and gave them gold or money. That was of no use. What is the use of giving them gold or money? There was no money. They used to give them wood. They used to give them cows that can be used in doing the havan. So cow was a very useful gift. So I have seen, and this is something that I realized later on. So I used to tell certain people to get these Kamadhenu, with all the deities handcrafted on them, small figurines you can get on Amazon India. And I used to say there is also a baby, um, calf. In certain texts, they say the baby calf's name is Rohini. Okay, so Rohini and Kamadhenu has to be gifted together to somebody and ask them to gift it. So basically, you're sending prosperity, auspiciousness to their house by gifting them. And when they see it, it's like because all the 33 gods and 33,000 gods, which Yagna Valkya also talks about, they're all there on the holy cow. Okay, so I think this is what I wanted to say. And then finally, I wanted to also bring this point, which might be something as a thing that you can think about, is I feel this nakshatra is somewhere connected to the stratosphere and the ozone. Because if ozone is depleted, it can lead to certain events on the earth plane where there are holes, there are mystical things that happen. And just before we started, we were discussing and Eve was mentioning about the Bermuda Triangle. Now, I was very fascinated with all of these mystical things, and I used to study. And somebody in one of the theories, conspiracy theory, they said that the ozone layer there is, broken, and that's why you see all of this phenomenon which is happening, where there is missing aircrafts and missing, ships that go missing there. This is something to do with the and conspiracy theories were there, and I read a lot about things what people are saying about the Loch Ness monster that they observed, or so there is gravitational force which is very high in the Bermuda Triangle. So all of these things were very fascinating. I think they are all connected to somewhere with this nakshatra, is what my belief is. That is something that you can ponder. I'm not saying that I'm confirming, but I feel something to do with the stratosphere and the higher levels what protect the earth, because I hear Buddha is a protective deity. He wants to bind and keep things together, the earth and the heavens together. So that is one thought I wanted to leave. The another thought which I also had is in Narada Purana, I read about this thing called as Pichumanda Vriksha. Now, when you go and understand what is Pichumanda Vriksha, it is, so every nakshatra in Narada Purana is given to a tree. There is a tree associated. Now, Pichumanda Vriksha is what is mentioned here. And when you see, it is called as Nimba. Nimba means the neem tree. Now, neem, I found out, if you can have a boundary of neem trees are usually planted in places where there is arid climate or arid environments to make sure that the fertile lands do not be converted to become deserts, because deserts keep spreading, right? Because the sand particles and things can keep spreading, and even cultivatable and fertile lands can also become deserts if they are not taken. So one of the remedies, natural remedies that was given is to plant trees, neem trees. And fascinatingly, it says neem trees have a kind of an ability, as per Ayurveda, of rain seeding, which means they can capture the clouds in that area where the neem trees grow in abundance, and they can bring rainfall. That got me to think whether our ancients knew of this technology of using certain specific vrikshas and trees. And it's fascinating to see that this nakshatra, Shakti, as per Dr. David Frawley, where he talks about the Shaktis of the nakshatras. And when I try to look for information, I don't know what he has claimed, that it is from the commentary of Bhatta Bhaskara Mishra from the Taittiriya Brahmana or Samhita. That is where he is taken, and I have not found that commentary, unfortunately, so I would not. So he talks about the Shakti is Varshodhyamana Shakti, which means to capture the rain clouds and to bring rain. So it's very natural that neem might have been used to capture the rain-bearing clouds like Ahir Budanya. What did I say? These are the clouds. Ahir means the cloud. It's also like a Vritrasura, which is evaporating the water and taking Apa and capturing Apa. Apa is the fresh waters. And Indra comes, he strikes his Vajra, which is the thunderbolt. And then you see, after the lightning, you see the fresh waters are released. So Indra became the god of the fresh water rains. Because he has struck Vritra. Vritra is nothing but the dark, large clouds that are there. So he has slayed him, and Apa was released back to us. Fresh waters were again released. So very symbolic and very beautiful narrations you can find in the Vedas and the Puranas. And unless you can interpret them and look at and correlate them, you will not be able to understand them. So these were some things, because neem is also very much used as an antibacterial properties are there. And I said in Ayurveda, they say it removes heat. Maybe it is the ability to bring water, or I do not know Ayurveda. Maybe if any of you have read about neem, but only thing I knew, neem has antibacterial properties which is being used. But I wonder whether they say in Ayurveda it is to remove pitta. Also neem can be used. If there is too much of pitta in the body, neem can work to remove the pitta. Of course there could be other Ayurvedic herbs as well. It's not purely neem that you have to use. You have to use in combination. So obviously go to a professional Ayurvedic doctor. I'm just talking from the terms of a nakshatra. Anyway, so I think I should end my discussion on this, because I can go on and on. But very interesting that Ahir Buddhina was also being referenced. I'm talking about in Rig Veda, in chapter 6 and the shloka 50. You also see there is mention of Ahir Budanya and Ajayakapada. So you can see these are not deities which have been evolved later on. They are Rig Vedic deities, because they have been talked about in the Rig Veda, as early as Rig Veda. So you can think about them as not deities which have emerged later on. Okay, so you can look at most of these deities are coming from the Vedas. Okay, so that is my observations that I had about this nakshatra. So, who I think is it Aditya who wants to go next, or anybody has anything to comment, to add to whatever observations that I had on the.
Yeah. Interestingly, can I go? I think.
Yeah,
okay.
God Aditya. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
So there's a very clear combination of Indra. Many times you mentioned, and I was thinking, if you could, Indra, if you say it is a Jyeshtha nakshatra, Jyeshtha nakshatra's deity is Indra. If you see Jyeshtha and Uttara Bhadrapada, again, they come into Mitra or Paramitra. Paramitra, I guess, correct? Am I right?
Yeah, Mitra. Paramitra, actually. Yeah, but Jyeshtha will be Paramitra.
Paramitra. So you can see the connection there again, Jyeshtha with Uttara Bhadrapada and their deities. Not their deities, but at least there is some connection. Rain bearing. And I don't know whether it is how much of this point is applicable to other nakshatras. We need to study that and try to see how they support maybe this Mitra, Paramitra, nakshatras relations. Some way, even Maruts. If you say from Marut will be again from Ardra. It will be what from Uttar Bhadrapada to Ardra will be what? I don't know. I'm not aware of.
Well, Andhra will actually be Vipasa,
Actually,
right? If I'm not
guys,
mistaken.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Mercury nakshatras are sampat to Shani nakshatras.
Okay.
So
Okay,
it's
Sampat.
not Paramamitra, but it's sampat. I just didn't want to interfere.
Anuradha and next nakshatra would be Jyeshtha, so it will be Sampat.
Yeah, but
Oh, I
for
see.
the opposite also, right? Yeah.
It's sampat. Yeah, sampat nakshatra. And it makes a lot of it does correlate. Dr. Paiji, before Adityaji goes, it's very interesting with this fire and water relationship. It's actually a very important point of the Bhadrapadas. So that I would like everyone to hold kind of their mind. It's odd how the things you said are actually they're actually very relevant. So people should I think contemplate why that is. I just want to throw that out there. If you have a lot of forest fire, or if they said if everyone was burning the havans or the homas, that it would bring the rain, right? So the fire goes up and the rain comes down. There's some kind of correlation between this heat and the rain, just like tapas. Wait, is it tapas, right? So it goes up, and then the grace rains down and stabilizes the tapas. Meaning that you have to burn, you have to destabilize, you have to be willing to die to attain that grace. So that Purva Bhadra, that Ugra you're talking about, that we talked about last time, this Tikshna Ugra, some text, without that burning and that willingness to throw oneself in the sacrificial fire, so to speak, the grace cannot rain down. You have to produce enough heat for that. And it's up as above, so below, right? The earth behaves like our bodies behave like the earth. It's almost like everything tends to mimic in this whole thing, this whole, whatever we call it, the world, creation. It seems to be constructed off of opposite qualities, gunas, right? So it's all opposite gunas. And it seems to be a bit repetitive. So we have hot, cold, and the effects of hot and cold, temperatures coming together, the chemical effects tend to do the same thing in the earth that they do in our bodies. So the Bhadrapadas, I would just ask everyone to sit with these. The contemplation on these nakshatras is actually very deep, because you are getting into more of the Akash Tattva, which is that there's the physical Akash, but then there is the there's the Chidakash. Okay, so in a yogic text that you were referring to, there's just a correlation of things that you were speaking with, that if people were to kind of alter their mind just a bit, for those people who are, really thirsty for the spiritual path, you could say, there's a lot of secrets at these end nakshatras. And they all correlate with that higher energy of Lord Shiva, and also Vishnu, as you were saying. Uttara Bhadrapada is a Vishnu Trimurti nakshatra, so it actually stabilizes. You produce the spiritual energy, if you want to call it spiritual energy, the internalized energy, when the fire gets so much and it rises up in Purva Bhadrapada, up, you could say, up the subtle channel. And if it gets so hot, then the grace rains down and preserves that state. So you'll see a lot of references to being absorbed in an experience, mystical experience, if you will, and much of that is in Meena Rashi. And Meena Rashi is the only one that's considered Akash. So anyway, I just would like to, before we moved on from yours, because it had so many pointers, even though it was not directed towards the inner path, you could say, it correlates. Yeah.
That's
and the Mercury debilitated too, right?
Yeah,
The Nietzsche Mercury.
And very fascinating, you brought this point. Thanks, AJ, for bringing this. Something comes to my mind. See, in our tradition that I come from our region, whenever we do any havan or we do a yagna, if that yagna is followed by a rainfall, then we say the deity is very happy. It's as though it is an approval from the heavens which is coming, which is, again, we're talking about fire and then water coming next to it, right? Okay. Now, you might also see in some of the Indian cinema that people are burning the dead body in the crematorium, and there is rainfall also which is coming, which is again a showing that the soul is definitely gone somewhere very important place, because in a crematorium where the funeral fire is burning and there is rainfall which is coming, can also show a connection again, fire and earth. Agni Sthoma. The Agni Stoma Yagna is something similar to that, right? Also, when you look at, if you go a little bit, probably in the 1970s and 80s, and look at some of the Hollywood, not the Hollywood, Bollywood movies, you'll always see lovemaking is always near a fireplace and it is raining outside. And both the hero and the heroine are making love inside the house in a fireplace, and there is rainfall outside. You know, Falguni. It is like Falguni is fire and water again.
That's the thing I was trying to say, Dr. Paiji, as above, so below. So I know in spiritual thought, there's always this, or in studying any kind of subject that's linked with spiritual thought, let's say like any of the angas of the Vedas, like this is a Vedanga. So there's this tendency to, separate the material and the spiritual really harshly, almost. Too much discussion around the Shadripus and all of this stuff and shaming. And I actually think it gets us really far from nature. So if you look, nature has a progression, and in the Falgunis, you have the mating. You're the mating of the physical body. You're the producing of the heat, and you bringing the rains. So you have this kind of, that's that romantic love, that fire. And then directly across from it, you have this is the mystic love. This is the making love with the invisible. And it's the same kind of devotion. It requires the same kind of focus, the same kind of application of our emotional energy, as a matter of fact. So one of the only reasons they would say to be celibate and this and that, it's not because you need to be shamed as a human. It's not because your parts or your body is shameful. It's because that same energy that you use to be devoted or attracted, or, that same energy that you would use for procreation is forced into different channels. So the Bhadrapadas are that. And to your point last time, Dr. Paiji, about Tantra, this is exactly why the Purva Bhadrapada people, or the Uttara Bhadrapada people, you will see tremendous amounts of them gravitating towards those more the Tantras, the Agori path, because what's happening there is a redirection of that same procreative energy. The same procreative energy that creates you, kills you. Death is an outcome of life. So it's very, very beautiful. I just didn't want to let that moment pass, because you had covered those opposite gunas so well, and I just wanted to kind of bring them around and string them together. So thank you. I'll go after Togi Ji with my presentation is very short, so let's have Togi Ji.
No, you can go ahead. No worries. You can go ahead.
Before one of you go ahead, I just wanted to end just by giving you the Nakshatra Gayatri, which comes from South India. I've not seen it in the North Indian text. Every Nakshatra has a Gayatri associated with it. Now, the Gayatri which I have found more in Andhra, Karnataka, is where I have seen this Gayatri mantras more. So I do not know the source of the Gayatri. Now, the Gayatri says, the Gayatri mantra for Uttara Bhadrapada is Om Ahir Buddhnaya Vidmahe Pratishthapanaya Dhimahi Tanno Uttara Proshtapata Prachodya. Proshtapatano, it is Patha. That is how I have heard it from the tradition. Om Ahir Buddhnaya Vidmahe Pratishthapanaya Dhimahi Tanno Uttara Proshtapatha Prachodya. Now, the interesting word here is Pratishthapanaya. What is Pratishthapanaya, which Sanskrit means installation program, which means you are fixing something, you are establishing something. What is Pratishthapanaya? When an image or a deity is consecrated or erected, because it's a Sthira Nakshatra and it's a very auspicious Nakshatra. So there is a connection with the Ahir Buddhnya helping you with the consecration or with the final thing that you can put the image there and then do the final ritual. So I just wanted to bring that because it's all about induction, installation, consecration, and establishment. Locating somewhere and then establishing, and from there it becomes your deity that you worship. Okay,
Wow.
so who's
Okay.
going?
I
Yeah, Dr. Pai, before,
Yeah.
yeah, so let me just add one quick thing, Dr. Pai. It's very
Sure, go
interesting you
ahead.
mentioned about the Airavat part as being Ahi Rawat, as you mentioned. That was very interesting. I never heard that before. I think that is very much interlinked also, but I'll talk about that when it comes to mine. But it is very interesting. I wasn't aware that Airavat was perhaps like a Naga kind of thing, which was making
He's a
it very
Naga.
interesting.
You can go and look on Wikipedia. His name is also called as Nagamalla. He is one of the brothers of all of the Nagas, which is Ananta Shesha or whether it is Vasuki. He is all brothers with them. They all have the same mother. Okay, so
they're all the children of is that I didn't know this either. The Sandeep ji, I didn't know either. That I learned that.
No, the concept is clear. Why? Because see where this all people came from. Where did Airavat come from?
From Samudramanthan, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Where is Ananta Sesha? What is
Samudramanthan?
Lakshmi? Samudramanthan. Where is
Oh, yeah,
Lakshmi
all
coming
that,
from?
yeah, makes sense.
Where
Yeah,
is Lakshmi coming
Samudramanthan, right?
from?
Yeah.
Samudramantan. All these are all
Yeah.
Samudramantan creatures. So they are all brothers and
Sandeep ji, are you
sisters.
going to be talking about Samudra Manthan with this?
I
Yeah.
have one slide, but I thought maybe I should talk. I
Actually, I
probably.
think you should. May I share mine? And then I think yours is going to
Yeah.
complement if you have that.
Yeah,
'Cause I didn't actually put the slides for that, but it's very fascinating you brought that up because
Yeah.
here, I'll just share really quick.
Yeah, all
Guys,
yeah.
my presentation this time is very short, so I'll just kind of
Yeah,
share.
you can go ahead. I think you can go ahead, Evji, after this.
And
I'm
then,
also doing several things here already. So my work and everything I'm doing. So you go ahead. No worries. I'm here.
okay, so let's see what you guys can see here.
Yeah, you were telling about Samudra Manthan. Go ahead. I would be interested.
Oh yeah, no, you're gonna cover that more. I just have one point with it. Really.
No, go ahead.
First, let me just scan through these. This is going to be really fast. It's just to connect the listeners and any, I always first and foremost pray that you're all protected from my ignorance. If I'm misleading in any way, because much of this knowledge is Guhya Vidya. I do not profess to be the knower of all secrets. And so all of you listening, you should always have that discernment that what we're sharing here is an offering, and it hopefully stokes the fire of your own curiosity and intelligence. So I wanted to bring us to the physical element of how this can be used in mundane astrology, only because it does relate to the inner, just like Dr. Paiji had kind of started us on that path. Uttara Bhadrapada is very fascinating. Right before we were going to do this video, I was telling the guys that I had researched earthquakes. And I was expecting to see a lot more tsunamis, floods, earthquakes, just based on what is said or discussed with this nakshatra typically, okay? Me, normally I'm more interested in the devotional or yogic side of things. So some of this mundane astrology I don't always get into. So I was kind of interested with the that element this time. I wanted to see. I could not find the evidence that this nakshatra is linked with those kinds of natural disasters. Interestingly enough, what I did find is something that reinforces Nadi techniques with Jyotish, especially if you're using Vimshottari Dasha lords. Vimshottari Dasha is very special for Nadi because they use the trines all the time. You're using trines all the time. Brigu Rishi, Brigu Nadi, it's all about these trines, and they're tied through Tattva, they're tied in all these different ways. Now, only the Vimshottari Dasha lords do this, but at the heart of all the water signs, the Jala Tattva Rashis, is Shani. So here's Totogiji's point on Samudra Manthan, which I hope he'll cover because Korma avatar is involved. I mean, the whole thing is linked with Shani actually, and the Nagas, and this nakshatra is very important for this. But so Shani becomes the core of all the water Rashis. He becomes the heart. It's in the middle of them, per the nakshatra dasha lord. I found that Cancer, specifically Pushya and Anuradha, were linked more with the flooding, the tsunamis, the earthquakes. I mean, the data was just amazing, actually. And for those of you interested in looking, you can go on davidguru.com or wherever you want to go. But this is where I was on the public charts. There's many charts you can look at under nature, under floods, tsunamis, earthquakes. They have tons and tons of charts. So I saw this. I saw that Cancer Rashi seemed to be very connected to the oceans of the earth, the earthly oceans. And then I just happened to think, you know, it's an Akasha Tattva nakshatra. Pisces is the only Rashi that carries Akash besides a portion of Kumbha. And so I was like, oh, I wonder about plane crashes. I wondered. I just wanted to see the atmospheric element here. And what I found was very interesting, because all of these people here, these are all musicians that died in plane crashes, okay? Music is Akash Tattva. Guru is the carrier of Akash Tattva. Those of you who have followed my little bits of research, you know that Guru has a very strong link with musicians. It's not a commonly spoken about thing. Most people think it's Venus, Mercury, Moon. Moon is definitely the singer. If you look at numerous singers' charts, very commonly they'll have even Moon Shani conjunction, because it's the pain in the voice, the longing in the voice that's affecting us, like Kishore Kumar and many of these guys. But you'll also see very prominent Guru, very prominent in their charts. And this is because Guru, or Brahaspati, in Jyotish is the carrier of Akash. So very fascinatingly, there's a kind of mystery. So many musicians die in plane crashes. There's like this long list, very long list. Now, there were so many charts of prominent grahas in Akasha Tattva, just Pisces alone, okay? And you'll see very commonly, you guys can go on this website yourself. I could not even compile them all, with plane crashes and Pisces, okay? The most common nakshatra, interestingly enough, when I did it statistically, turned out to be more likely Ashwini, something in Ashwini. So that's transport, right? But if you just go down the list, you're going to see so many charts of plane crashes where there are prominent grahas that fall in Meena Rashi, and the ones that didn't have Meena Rashi had the portion of Kumbha Rashi that's Akash. So they would have Purva Bhadrapada or Shadavishaka. So it's not Uttara Bhadrapada per se, but I want to draw everyone's attention to the waters above when they refer to Akasha Tattva. Okay, it's a really important point with this nakshatra over other nakshatras, or over, I would even say, the other Bhadrapada, which is rising upward. This one is coming down, and that's a very important feature of this nakshatra. So anyway, I compiled so many, there were so many, I didn't even put them on here, so you guys are welcome to go and view that. I'm going to now share this, and this is a really quick just run through of something I was mentioning earlier. And when you're, so I know that many viewers are very interested in the psychological element of nakshatras. I'm a little less interested in getting involved with people's psychology, but for those of you who are interested, please pay attention to the themes that happen outside of the psychology, because this world, because the principle is constructed off of opposites and repetition of some sort, you'll find that even psychologically, you can apply a lot of this. So if Purva Bhadra is rising upward, it's the more explosive one, and it's the more linked with fire. This one is the result coming down when you hear all of this discussion of foundation and a stira being fixed. it is the actual focus on raining down, coming down, not rising up. Okay, so this is critical, because this nakshatra behaves very differently, just like Purva Falguni behaves very differently than Uttara Falguni, even though they're a pair. Purva Shada behaves very differently than Uttara Shada. And same in this instance, that we have a stabilization of all the friction created in the previous nakshatra. So the energy is actually raining down in this nakshatra. So in mystic terminology, you'll hear a lot about these kind of cryptic things, the fire rising upward, and the rain pouring down, and increasing the fire instead of putting the fire out. This is it's very cryptic. So I wanted to just share, those of you who are interested can take screenshots and look this up yourself. These translations are perhaps, mediocre, because, forgive me, I'm not all knowing. I do the best that I can, and I try to simplify and get the essence. Shiva Samhita and many of the yogic works are very good for Jyotishis to study, especially if you do have anyone coming to you that has questions about their inner path. I really dislike the whole divide between material and spiritual, those words, but for sake of simplicity, I guess I have to use it. But really, there's one path that moves outward and materializes things, and there's a path that moves inward and dissolves things. On that path, to lose is to gain. To lose is to gain. The more you lose that tightly coiled grip on this material reality, the less you direct your energy to produce that materialization, and the more that you allow it to internally radiate, you'll find that the more you lose, the more you gain. So there's something with the Bhadrapadas and this willingness to throw off, to transform. Now, Uttara Bhadrapada becomes more the stabilizing one. And in a lot of these yogic texts, you'll see references to, once the energies rise up, there's a, here it says a moon rains down nectar. And this stabilizes the yogic state of consciousness. God, English is such a poor language for this discussion, but it stabilizes the state that has been, once someone has hit one of the stages on the path. This Uttara Bhadrapada is a lot of the references are the stabilization of that step that you've made. Okay, so this is where the person's very interested in stabilizing the attainment. Now that happens in the material world too. Purva Bhadrapada is very active in charities, as we discussed. It's very active in the world in many ways. And this Uttara Bhadrapada is very interested in stabilizing that. It's one of the wealth-giving nakshatras, actually, speaking of Lakshmi. And what is real wealth? We have to ask that too. Real wealth should be a kind of wealth that no one can take from us, right? That's what I would feel. It shouldn't be so easy to destabilize your sense of contentment. And material wealth, when it leaves us, we get really disturbed. So it probably isn't it's probably not the most reliable form of wealth. I think when we're talking about Lakshmi, we're talking about a very deep concept here. But because a lot of this is Gupta Vidya or Guhya Vidya, I just recommend that you guys take screenshots, go look up your own translations of these books. But if you're curious about, Uttara Bhadrapada, there is a strong link with sound. Okay, and Shiva Samhita talks a lot about the stages of this internal nod, the Brahma nod. So even in the Ganapati mantra, we hear, in the Ganapati mantra, we hear this Brahma nod. We hear it a lot throughout Vedic speaking. It's very rather intoxicating. This is also where you get the mystic wine. So there's an emphasis on in Meena Rashi oftentimes on music, the absorption in music. And see, Shukra is Ucha, right? In Revati Nakshatra, we've often talked about that. Shukra is less interested in the skills with music. That's more Budh. Okay, skills are always Budh. Shukra is absorbed. Okay, Shukra likes to be absorbed in that, you know, whether it's making love in the physical sense or whether it's making love in this sense. Shukra is very interested in that loss of self. And this is where Budh, who's actually born through Purvabhadra, he is Nietzsche here. So I would ask all of you to reconsider the meaning of Nietzsche as perhaps bowing down or on the ground and not so elevated, meaning perhaps not arrogant, not assuming that you know. This is the place where you have to realize that whatever you think you know, you do not know. And when that grace rains down, there's a beautiful union that lets you know you did not know. You're happy not to know. You're happy. Music, you don't need to understand music. You just enjoy it. You just experience it. So, you know, you will see a lot of these mystics that are drinking the mystic wine, so to speak. You will see a lot of them have Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra. They're stabilized in this state. They've created the heat and now the grace has rained down. So I have a visitor. So, you know, the author of the Mysticism of Sound and Music, he was also an author of some very beautiful Sufi poetry. You know, here you see an image of Lord Shiva with the raining down on top of his head. You'll see these kind of symbologies, like Dr. Paiji was saying earlier, that pay attention to the iconography, because it's a language. Images are a language as well. So this raining down of the grace, this raining down of the mystic wine, you could say, Uttara Bhadrapada has a very strong link with the stabilization of mystic states. Okay, the stabilization of that state, whereas Purva Bhadrapada is burning to achieve it. Uttara Bhadrapada is now in the room with the beloved, so to speak. As Dr. Paiji was saying about Uttara Falguni, that's actually after the marriage has taken place. Just like Purva Bhadra is when you're, you know, burning, you're burning for this. And then once the grace pours down, the music pours down, the person is able to actually share that grace. You get that feeling around them. You get that feeling. So Shri Anandi Maima, or Moima as it said in Bengali, but she's a Uttara Bhadrapada Lagna. You know, Paramahansa Yogananda, I believe it's Mangal in the 8th conjunct is Jupiter, Uttara Bhadrapada. I think so. You know, Paramahansa Ramakrishna, Venus in Uttara Bhadrapada. You know, so you'll see this very commonly, that, you know, the ones that are drinking the wine and are somewhat stabilized in that secret, that maybe understand the meaning of some of this mystic poetry, like Hafez or Rumi. These are the people that are, even though they're stabilized in the longing, they still may be full of longing. It's just very different than what's happening in Purva Bhadrapada. Another, this is the end, very interesting thing about the Nakshatra Vara yogas with Uttara Bhadrapada, because it's that fire-water dynamic here. This is Dr. Paiji. Now you see why I was mentioning how important what you said is. So interestingly enough, Uttara Bhadrapada is one of the nakshatras that you can have a Sarva Siddhi yoga with. And it only happens on the days of Agni. And it's not because Uttara Bhadrapada It does give a Pitta constitution according to most texts. So it does give a predisposition towards having Agni in the body, but that's just the dosha of the body. This is more cryptic, why this brings a form of perfection, because without the fires, we don't have the rain. So Uttara Bhadrapada on the days of Agni produced Sarva Siddhi. Then for those of you who were born on other days, there's a few special yogas. So there's 2 yogas that happen on Tuesday, on Mangalvar, and 2 yogas that happen on Ravivar. So one of them, it looks repetitive, but it has a slightly different meaning. Both of them deal with attainment. Siddhi is attainment. So in the days of Mangal, is a yoga for attainment. On the days of Surya, it's a sthira yoga. And if you think of Surya's nature, he's very fixed, consistent. He moves exactly a degree every day. He never waxes or wanes. He is the most consistent thing in the sky. So on a Sunday, Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, and this is your Janma Nakshatra, by the way, which is the moon nakshatra, Chandra's nakshatra, it produces this sthira yoga. So the phala, or the fruit of that yoga, is of course to produce stability, and specifically material stability is very interested. A lot of what's in Muhurta Chintamani seems to revolve around material stability. On a Friday, which is Jala, okay? This is Shukra's day. Now this is interesting because Shukra has a lot to do with mystics, and it's a Dwaja yoga. Now in some texts, this is also called Dwaja Ketu yoga. And Ketu symbol is a flag, right? He's called Shukra Mitra. So there's so many mysteries to unpack here. But someone like Shukracharya, perhaps you could say, and they say this about Brahmins, that they are twice born. And this has to do with the mystic death. Okay, so this is very heavily a Bhadrapada thing. And this is something I would ask all of you to really think about. And on a Thursday, it's a royal yoga, interestingly enough. On Guru's day, on Brihaspati's day, if you're born under Uttara Bhadrapada, it's a Kshatriya yoga, which exactly like it sounds, it refers to Kshatriyas. Kshatra has many meanings, actually, if you were to look it up. But the karma palam of this yoga is actually Raj Saman, which is to give royal status. So here's where the, this is where you can see this nakshatra can become quite material, especially because of the link of Lakshmi, because of the link of wanting this stability. You will see that oftentimes if someone doesn't have that thirst for the inner path yet, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. But if they're perhaps in a lifetime where this is just interested in material things, which may be a blessing, I don't know. If you can just be that simplistic. When someone's just interested in those things, this nakshatra serves them very well, because it really, you can see that the kind of yogas that are formed just even from the Vara nakshatra yogas. Then there's Vara Titi nakshatra yogas, and it's very interesting to examine these with Uttara Bhadrapada, because most of them do have some kind of either wealth giving or status giving connection. So, okay, guys, that's it. That's it. Thank you.
I wanted to add some things that I observed. It's a fantastic thing. That's why it kept me thinking about so many themes that you had brought up. One very interesting observation that I made from your presentation was your mentioning of the word Mandakini. Now, many people do not know Mandakini means the heavenly Ganges, which means it is another name for Milky Way, Okay, Milky Way is Akashganga, and Milky Way we also say is Shira Sagara. Shira Sagara means is the celestial ocean of milk, right? Shira Sagara. Now, when I was reading about this in Padma Purana, I came across that Padma Purana also says about I was talking about the locals, right? Rasatala is where it is said that Sheshnag is there and his bed is in the Shira Sagara. And I also mentioned Surabhi is associated with the Rasatala, which means that is her abode. She resides there. Surabhi is the mother of Ananta Shesha, is of Ayur Budanya, is what I said, from Vishwakarma's son. So I see some connection with maybe, space and the connection with the Milky Way and everything,
Dr.
some very
Paiji, this is really interesting. It's something I didn't really talk about. I almost opened with the Shanta Karam Bhujagashayana mantra. And I almost began speaking about Vaikunt, actually, but I don't feel qualified. I'm not at that level. So I don't want to do it disjustice. But I do think anyone who's curious what you're tapping into right there, it's very high. Like you talked about the 7 lokas, Sufis even talk about 7 planes, 7 stops on the path, the inward path. I feel that English becomes very misleading because there's so much speaking of up and down and high and low, and it almost creates this imagery of good and bad, where you see really clearly here where Lord Shiva's telling his beloved Parvati, Parvati goes and teaches the yogis. Actually, she's the one that ends up teaching after he teaches her. It's fascinating. But he tells her, oh, I don't know if I put it here. I meant to. So he tells her that the qualified, wait, I was just on a point. I'm so sorry. My mind just, Akash. Kagaya.
Yeah, you're talking about Parvati and all that, yeah.
No, I was talking about
before that,
something Dr. Paiji said. It's an important point.
Vaikunta and all that, Vaikunta, Surabhi and all that.
Vaikuntha, the 7th planet, the 7th.
The multiple lokas and all that, and the yogi Sufis at some points is what you're saying.
Yes, it was something
Okay.
about the qualification of the aspirant to actually teach them proper yoga. It was something regarding that, and it's not supposed to be said because it was taken from my head, so I won't say. I'll be humble with that. But there's many stages of the aspirant, of the yogi, this sincerity. There's levels of sincerity. There's levels of thirst. And he goes into great detail explaining those levels, okay? So then he goes into great detail explaining how the mystic sounds start coming through. And I was getting to a point on that, which I actually won't speak on. I'll just ask people to read the Shiva Samhita themselves and see if it rings to them. But there's an actual link between what Dr. Paiji was talking about with Sheshnag and the whole thing with this nakshatra, the things they're trying to speak about with this nakshatra are actually very profound. Once you get to the end nakshatras, because you have to remember the Vedic people were much more interested in the proper timing to do rituals. They weren't interested in personality astrology. That not so much. So why did they go to links to explain these Shaktis, like the Brahmanas, like the Shaptapada Brahmana, like that's where Dr. David Frawley gets a lot of his, I think actually Taittiriya Brahmana. Anyway, if you read the Brahmanas, they're so much more focused on rituals, and that's where a lot of the nakshatra knowledge actually comes from, is the ritualistic knowledge. like the proper time. Jyotish, more than anything else, is actually a study of Mahakal, of time. Time and light must be intricately in union somehow. Even the terminology light year, you know, like how all of it, there's something very special. Like even when you hear Shiva's name, the Trikalagni, there's actually a rishi named after that name of Shiva, and he had knowledge of the past, present, and future. That's mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Actually, I think Narada has a very deep conversation with him about Kali Yuga, and he's the one that can see the past, present, and future. So when these nakshatras are linked with something like some bigger concept like Ananta Shesha, who, you know, Vishnu is reclining on Ananta Shesha, right? Lord Vishnu is the all-pervading. That's once again a reference to time in a way, timelessness perhaps, but what is all-pervading? All-pervading what? These are very deep concepts. They're not, so that's the reason I didn't open with Vishnu. I have no idea who that guy is. It's so profound, actually. I haven't realized who he is. When you hear all pervading, we just take it for granted. What does that mean? You know, so his serpent that he's reclining on, and the thing with the Vaikuntha, and they show Lakshmi's always pressing his feet. Out of the navel comes Brahma. You know, Brahma's us, really. We're all little Brahmas, the only God still evolving. Look, we're born out of the umbilical cord of our mother. And once the cord's cut, what happens? Our first breath, our independent karma starts. Before that, our mother is breathing for us. Right? So the whole thing is very profound. And see, Uttara Bhadrapada has something to do with the actual being stationed in a state of consciousness, a state of either samadhi or awareness. Samadhi, you could say the stabilization of that samadhi. Because there's different samadhis is mentioned in all of these yogic texts. There's not only one. And a lot of the times the yogi has to come out. A lot of times they come out, whether it's after 7 years or after a day. And it's timeless, where some of them will say the last thought they had before going into samadhi, they have it coming out. So what is all pervading? What is that? Like, this is a very, it's beyond my pay grade. I'm in great need of guidance. I can't, I'm no one's guru. I'm just another, you know, thirsty fish out of water, no significance. There's millions of us. So I contemplate these things because of the thirst, but Vishnu has not shown himself to me. So who knows what he is. But when we're talking about these things, we can establish, at least in our limited awareness, that this nakshatra has something to do with the actual stationing. So Vaikuntha, where Lord Vishnu is resting, where he's actually stationed. You know, this nakshatra is tamaguna as well. It's tamas. It's tamas. So it actually, I would even ask everyone to look up the first portion of Devi Mahatmyam, where the Tantroktam, Ratri Suktam that I speak about very commonly, because that is the Tamaguna chapter. And actually Agni is the Tattva. And the whole thing is about waking Vishnu up, because he's stationed, he's sleeping. See, Nidra, sleep, is a form of you could call it, it's not really samadhi, but it's kind of, it's an absorption, right? So yeah, this is for those of you who are interested. There's probably many of you cringing and just wanting to know, what this nakshatra predicts in everyday life, in the stock market. I don't know. I can't help you there. But I can, the place I can help you is that it has something to do with residing in. Bhav has something to do with Bhav, residing in something, stabilization. So Purva Bhadra has something to do with raising the energy, producing enough force, fire, to possibly cut through or penetrate through something. Just like Purva Falguni used to be one of the nakshatras where the bride and groom, it was the first wedding night, right? That's the first, commencement of that activity, which is a kind of piercing, if you will. And then Purva Bhadra is a different kind of piercing. It's got to have enough heat, it has enough momentum, enough energy, enough friction to break through. Then once it breaks through, so that nakshatra has something to do with achievement, very artha oriented in some way. And then this nakshatra has something to do with, once that achievement has happened, the stabilization of that. So whether it's a state of consciousness, just like the mystics speak about how you go through these various stations, this nakshatra would indicate someone being stabilized on that. Okay, so same thing in the stock market, I guess. You just would have to know. Same thing in your marriage, same thing in your, your children's lives, whatever it may be. I've met many Uttara Bhadrapada lagnas and moons that are very interested in stabilizing wealth for their family. Now, this is can be a very big focus of this nakshatra. So yeah, anyway, so yeah, Dr. Paiji is a very, very beautiful, these two nakshatras are very deep. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of material on them. These are the two nakshatras of Bhadrapadas that I'll have people say they don't understand. So we're
not much information on deities and all. Yeah.
So what you said just now, PG, if I have to summarize, I can just summarize it in the mantra that you said. Shantakaram bhujage shayanam padmanabham shuresham. Shantakaram, shant is peaceful.
Shantakaram, producing peace. Yeah, literally the activity of peace. Yeah.
Bhujaga means the serpents. Ananta Sesha. Shayanam is resting on the bed of Bhujanga. Bhujaga Shayanam. Padmanabha, which means from his navel, from his nabi, the lotus flower came. Shuresham.
Lakshmi. Oh yeah. Yes.
Vishwadharam Gagana Shadrasham. What is Gagana? We talked about Mandakini, we talked about Milky Way, Akash Ganga, Shira Sagara. So, Gagana Shadrasham, Meghavarna. Meghavarna means like cloud, dark like the cloud. I hear Budhanya is the cloud, we said. Shubhangam. Lakshmi Kantam, because Lakshmi is involved, we said, this is Lakshmi. Kamala lotus eyes. Yeah. I have told my lessons, I don't know whether some people or scholars will agree. All the Saturn related nakshatras are connected to Kamala, which means Padma, lotus.
Yes.
Pushya nakshatra, pink lotus is what I say. Okay? Anuradha nakshatra, blue lotus, which is the rare. It is hidden. It only comes in the middle of the night. It's sitting in Scorpio sign. What we call as Pushkara. Pushkara is blue lotus. Here, this is white lily or white lotus, white lily, which is, connected to this Pisces. So, Gagana Sadrasham, Megha Varna Shubhangam, Lakshmi Kantam, Kamala Nayanam, Yoga Bhirdhyana Gamyam, Vande Vishnum, Bhavahaya Haram, Sarva Lokaikanatham.
So you see
So
why
I
I
think,
wanted to use the mantra, because even the yogi, Jnana Gamyam, the yogis, even, you know, this state of being absorbed in this state, Megha Varna, the color of a storm, a cloud, you know, the storm cloud. So Varnam, right? So it's really everything to do with Uttara Bhadrapada. But I feel so, you know, I'm glad you said it actually now. I just felt reluctant because I don't feel that authority. I don't understand Vishnu. I know people will say, oh, Vishnu's a preserver. Vishnu's this, what do we know? This guy is so much connected with him, is very, to me, very special actually. And I'm very cautious with everything I am. It just so happens that for years I've done Rudram, so I feel a little bit more permission to speak that mantra from it. But you know, this Shantakaram mantra is very much linked with the Vishnu Sahasranamam, right? And even in the beginning of the Vishnu Sahasranamam, if you actually read through the Vishnu Sahasranamam, you're going to see a lot of things related to Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, actually. Even, you know, so it is very, somehow very linked with Lord Vishnu, and is even equally fascinating that Budh is Nietzsche. And I want to use the word Nietzsche because debilitated is not what that means. Like in Hindi, when you say Nietzsche, or like something's Nietzsche, it's on the floor, like go get that thing that's down there, you know, like when you say to, like, if something's down, it's not like it's debilitated. That's not what you're saying. So it's not the right terminology. So why is the Karaka of Vishnu Nietzsche? This is why I would ask all of you to go to Devi Mahatmyam when he's residing in his restful state and has to be woken up, because Mercury loses his activity. His activity is to discern. Look at the life of the avatar. Look at Shri Krishna's life. Look at Ram's life. They're born only for a purpose, for some kind of karma, not karma as people understand. This is another word that's butchered. Ka implies Brahma. It's activity. If you got yourself into karma, you can work your way out. Astrology shouldn't be an excuse. It's active. So, but Vishnu's always taking a physical form for a purpose. So he can't really be residing in Vaikuntha. He can't be reclining. You know, so these whole things with Nietzsche, Ucha, vary once again, probably Gupta Vidya. And like you'll see in Shiva Samhita and many works, the main rishi teaching it will often say, don't teach it to a person of this, and this quality. It's not because that person's bad. It's not because that person's lower. They actually won't understand, and it will distort the vidya. It distorts the purity. Those who understand will understand. Those who are not living, it's not even living a lifestyle. I think there's a preparedness. You know, so these things are really deep. When we go reading people's charts and we say, oh God, this bad thing's going to happen, we're not always right. And the reason is we're not understanding what these concepts are. These rishis were on a different, their sight is very different than good, bad, high, low. Oh, that's actually what I was going to say, is that Shiva says when you're absorbed in that nod, so I guess I'm supposed to say it now. When you're absorbed in that nod, good, bad, and indifference all dissolve. So the concept of good and bad, and indifference, even detachment, even this, when you're absorbed in the nod, all of those concepts dissolve. So anyway, yeah, thank you, Dr. Paiji. It's beautiful. I'm so happy you recited that mantra. I didn't feel
Oh, but that's wonderful that
Had
you
the
brought it up. I wouldn't have connected. And one final thing, because otherwise this will be another blockbuster movie, and we have to go to Dr. Thogi. Aditya will take over. But one final thing today I understood, and that is something that only those people who understand will know what you've written here. The Dvaja, something came to my mind, and I understood today. You have awakened my vision to something. Dvaja, the word Dvaja itself, I was thinking, and coming along with the Friday. See, Ja means born. Dvaja means somebody who has two fathers. One child having two fathers. This is possible. That means twice born, or born two times from the two different fathers. So Lakshmi is called as Dvaja because she's twice born. Once from Brigu, as per, and then again from the Samudra Manthan. She's again reborn. And now I wonder, from this Dvaja also means mark. Okay. And for those people who understand Jyotish, I leave it to them. I have a wonder that whether Ketu and Venus can be Dvaja, which means twice born. Ketu could also be twice born. When Ketu comes with Shukra, look, Shukra is the natural Marakesh of the Kundli, second and seventh house law. Can it give you an event happening twice on the same spot of the body or the same pattern repeating, which means if you're going through some relationship issues, Shukra, will the same pattern and similar sort of people will come into your life after a breakup? Or maybe you got a cut here. Imagine you get a cut after a few weeks on the same spot again. So something I feel is connected with Shukra and Ketu, and I have a very strong feeling Ketu could be twice more.
Well,
Because how can Ketu?
Dr. Paiji, because another thing I didn't discuss, which I just didn't have enough research on it. I'm very cautious with these things, but almost every graha has 3 nakshatras that they're born from in various sources. Ketu,
no, that is also, why? You know why? What is the reason they are born from? Because they are born different manvantaras. We are talking about Chakshusha Manvantara. In Chakshusha Manvantara, Surya is born from Vishaka. Okay, Shani is born from. But we have so many Manvantaras, 14 Manvantaras before. So from different Manvantaras, their birth has been there. That's why we get so many nakshatras.
It's very important to note this.
Always I've seen it. Any Manvantara is born from Kritika Nakshatra. Very, very surprising. Only moon. All other planets I'm seeing, they're born from various different nakshatras, you will see.
Well, there's multiple reasons for this. Once again, it has to be contemplated. It has to really be. So Ketu is usually, there's only 2 mentioned. But I have a feeling about Uttara Bhadrapada.
That's why I feel, because Ketu is very
Manthan, all of this.
That's something that came to my mind. And that's why I said, maybe we are going off track and off the subject, but it's very fascinating when somebody like you and the team is speaking. I absorb so much and learn so much from such discussions. But it's very fascinating that we're talking about. And because why I brought that is Ketu is Dvaja. Shikhi or Dvaja is Ketu, right? That's what it's called.
Sometimes at yoga, like I said, it's referred to as Dvaja Ketu. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ketus are comets. So you see the comet again, the event will happen again. What has happened? Maybe the comet, Halley's comet, came 70 years ago, let us say. What happened 70 years ago when you observe the same Ketu again? Something has to happen here on the earth which could mimic an event that happened when the other Ketu was observed, which means Dhuma Ketu is a comet or a meteoroid or some other celestial thing, like what you say is a falling star or whatever you say, right? Anyway, I think we are digressing, EG, and we are holding back the other 2, gentlemen from talking. So,
Bollywood feature.
We will do, yeah, your feature film will remain, our blockbuster will be 2 hours, just the 2 of us.
Laddu Baba. Sorry. Sorry.
No. I was enjoying. I'm doing, so many things to do. So I'm partly I have my calculations here all going on at the same time. At the same time, I'm absorbing. But interesting, as Shivji said, that mantra, which is Shantakam Bhujavashayanam, that's a very powerful mantra. And Evji, you may remember in 2018 about that mantra and the consequences of that mantra, which I don't want to talk about here, but
Yeah, but we experience, yes.
yes.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's not that easy mantra and lot of energy in it. I'm not qualified to talk there anyway. Let's come to this world from Vishnu Loka to Bhuloka, anyways. Okay, what I should tell? I need to talk, correct? Yes. Where is my slides?
Yeah, you're supposed to talk on Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra.
Uttara
In case you
Bhadrapada,
didn't know about it.
Yes. Uttara
I don't want
Bhadrapada.
him to talk about the James Webb, telescope, because that might be what he must have been doing some calculations.
That's what I'm doing actually. I'm analyzing the data from that new telescope.
And let us say it might be connected to Uttara Bhadrapada. We are talking about Akash Ganga, Mandakini, this, that, all about this.
The galaxies which I'm working right on is very near to Purva Bhadrapada and Uttara Bhadrapada, very near to that border. That same Stephen's
That
quintet,
is
that 5 galaxies.
Andromeda, right?
Andromeda.
Yes.
This is Andromeda. Okay, so yeah, I had that slide. Where is the slide gone? Somewhere here, maybe. Yeah, it's there. But anyway, a very interesting talk, both of you. And yes, so I think okay. In the meantime, I try to search for it. Why not you people go and discuss few things? By the time I open that slide,
Probably I'll add another word. I also wonder the Samudra Manthan whole thing. There was a horse which came out from the Samudra Manthan. Do you know what horse was it? It is called Uchishravas.
yeah.
This was a horse. I have a very funny feeling that is connected to Uttara Bhadrapada because Pegasus. Pegasus is the flying horse. And Uchishravas was also a winged horse. So maybe there is some connection there with because Gamma Pegasi and Al Janeb, which is called as is it Alpha Andromedae?
Yeah, I have that in my slide. Yes.
Yeah, and I read about it in the Sanskrit version. Okay, do you know what is the name of Alpha Andromedae in Sanskrit?
No, I don't know.
You'll be surprised. Even I was surprised. The name of Alpha Andromedae in Sanskrit is Devyani.
Oh, yeah. Devyani and Sharmishta. Yes.
Yes. So from there you can probably add to that.
Devyani is wife of Indra, is that right?
No, daughter of
Murugan.
Daughter Murugan, a wife of Murugan.
He has
Yeah.
2 wives, yeah.
Murugan's wife and daughter of Indra.
Devasena and Srivalli. Valli.
And I think Devyani is also mother of Krishna, is that right? Who is the
That
mother
is
of Krishna?
Devaki.
Oh, Devaki, right? Oh, that's right. My bad. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Devyani and Sharmishta, Okay, let me talk about this first. My research here. I was doing some research on these galaxies. Everybody would be knowing this, correct? So I'm working on this small hole, black hole here, trying to understand their gas properties and also all that calculations. It's beautiful, correct? This is this is actually, you must have seen this image for the James Webb. It is very near to Purva Bhadrapada nakshatra. So anyway, coming back to our topic here. Can you see my slides here?
Yeah, we can now. Yeah.
Okay, so Uttara Bhadrapada. I don't know what to start with. Okay, Uttara Bhadrapada, as we know, it is the 12th house. After that good long discussion, yes. So always connecting this nakshatra to the house, it falls the natural 12th house. So if I say 12th house, what are the themes that comes in your mind when you say 12th house? Of course, I've written some of those: moksha, meditation, spirituality, and always pay equal attention to the point opposite. What is opposite to 12th house? Come on, you need to speak now. I am a school teacher here.
Sixth house,
Otherwise,
right? Service and all
sixth
that.
house. Sixth house. Not all that. What all? Service. Yes. Then
Service, diseases, debt,
diseases,
health
that
issues,
correct. Yes.
enemies,
Yes. So
shuttle
I want
go
that.
and all that.
I want that to word disease. Because 12th house
Yeah.
is hospitals and sixth house is diseases. Somehow we are talking about medical too before the start of our lecture today. We were talking about. I was talking about my dental issues and medical bills, and how the system loots here. All medical persons. But anyway, so we were talking about all those medical bills again, coming to the point of Mercury getting debilitated and 12th and 6th. So all those things are coming very important, which play an important role. So understand, Uttara Bhadrapada has got something to do with this. And as we go, I will explain what all it is. All the 4 padas of Uttara Bhadrapada is in Pisces Rashi. Okay, fine. Now, Dr. Pais mentioned the symbol of this nakshatra is the back legs of the funeral cot. So a lot of themes are getting intermingled with Purva Bhadrapada and Uttara Bhadrapada. Purva Bhadrapada is the 4 front legs of the cot, and this is the back legs of the cot. This slide